Hey everybody, it's your favorite GNU friend and your favorite GNI friend, Gardiner, the Linux gamer. Or is it Gardiner? I don't know. This video is brought to you by my 128 amazing patrons, including the support of NQBW. Thank you, my dude. Without your support, I would not be able to do this. If you're enjoying this video, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps the show out. You can also subscribe and let me know that what I'm doing is your jam. You can also support the show by checking it out on LBRY. LBRY is an awesome decentralized blockchain-based YouTube alternative, and it's really, really cool. So Gary Newman, we have some news coming out from Gary Newman. He's kind of a controversial figure from what I've gathered. He's one of the leads over at Face Punch Studio, and they're kind of they're known the world over for Rust, which is the game we're talking about today. And they also produced Gary's Mod. Gary's Mod is the widely beloved sandbox, physics sandbox in the Source engine. But Gary Newman created a blog post over on the official Rust blog, and basically they're talking about the future, quote unquote, of Rust on Linux, the Linux client for Rust. So Rust, if you're not familiar, is a pretty popular survival game. It's been around for a couple years. I think it was released in 2015. I could be wrong about that. Let's look that up. 2013. Dang, that's an old game, yo. So, all right, so Rust is a pretty old game, and basically the developers have been supporting Linux for most of that time. I think most of that time. When you look over this blog post, what you find is that they are announcing that they are ending like lockstep version support for Linux, and they're basically splintering it off into a maintenance-only mode kind of deal. Why did they support Linux to begin with? Well, they go into that. Rust is developed in the Unity engine, and Unity claims that they support Linux, Mac, and Windows with minimal effort from the developers. So you can create a game on Windows in Unity, and you can publish a binary and ship it, and you don't really have to test a whole lot. Now, that isn't necessarily true, as many people have found that, Linux it requires a little bit of special consideration when you're publishing a game in Unity even, which claims to be like an effortlessly cross-platform engine. Certain libraries provided by Unity and third-party partners do not support Linux. Even something low-level like IL to CPP, which is like Unity's way of like taking an intermediate language like JavaScript or Mono and compiling it as C or C++, it looks like. That basically lets you run, write your game in whatever language you want, and then it gets compiled down to native code. But they don't actually support IL2 CPP for Linux. So it's only for Windows and Mac at this point. And that kind of sucks. And that's one of the reasons that they have decided to end Rust support on Linux. He said that he and his team wanted to support Linux because they felt it was the right thing to do, and they deserve props for that. They definitely do. Supporting Linux is smart, even if only a fraction of your users are using the Linux client. It makes your code more portable, and it allows you to have multiple systems supported. For example, on Windows, calling paths is not case sensitive, but on Linux it is. And if you write all your code on Windows and you don't care about case sensitivity, well, then you're going to have a bad time when you're porting it to Mac OS or Linux, or even something like the PlayStation 4 or the Switch. I mean, they all are case sensitive directory hierarchies. It's really important to be able to keep your code portable, and supporting Linux is one way of doing that. So the question is, why are they actually ending support? Besides the IL to CPP library not being supported on Linux, there's a couple other reasons that they give. And these guys really do deserve a little bit of credit, because they kept the version, the Linux version in lockstep with the Windows and Mac version for years. And, they said in the blog post that they believe that they provided above average Linux support, but that their support was still less than great. According to his blog post, Newman worries that they've been treating Linux users as second-class citizens, and then opines the fact that Linux users paid the same amount as Windows and Mac OS users, but they're getting the short end of the stick. They've had to decide in the past whether to break the Windows version of the game or the Linux version of the game and inconvenience either 99.9% or 0.01% of their user base. And, you know, that's a tough decision because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few sometimes. 12 months ago, they stopped selling the game for Linux on Steam. They also mentioned that the Linux client has become a sanctuary for cheaters. According to Newman, it's become a wretched hive of scum and villainy. He didn't actually say that. I just like that quote. Cheaters have begun to exploit the Linux client because of its lack of testing by the developers. And, you know, I can't blame them there either. So it kind of sucks that Rust support is ending. The next release is not going to have a Linux client update. In fact, they're putting the Linux client in maintenance mode. It's only ever going to receive maintenance patches from here on out. The Linux version is only going to be able to connect to a single Linux dedicated server, while the other ones, you know, Mac and Windows are going to be able to connect to each other. That will provide cross-platform play in that arena. But Linux players won't be able to play cross-platform, and that really sucks for us. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about what, you know, how I felt about this, and it really does stink. I mean, the fact I've never played Rust, it's not really my kind of game, but I know a lot of Linux players who do. And when I look at the blog post, essentially, there's a link in the description if you want to check it out. The blog post says that in the last 30 days, Windows users made up 227,842 players. Mac OS was 2,414 players, and Linux made up only 217 players in the last month. That's a tiny, tiny number. That really blows. It's inconveniencing a lot of Linux users who play Rust and who love and care about the game. And basically, my thought on this is, you know, if they're not going to support Linux, I can understand that. If it's not economical for them, if they're not familiar with providing binaries and testing games on Linux, you know, that's their decision. And it really is kind of a sad day to see that happen. But at the same time, what they could do is try to fix some of the common issues that are that have cropped up around playing Rust in Proton. If you check out the Proton DB page for Rust, you will find that the game has a borked rating, or it's a bronze rating, but most of the ratings on there are borked. You know, there are a couple of platinum. There's a platinum, there's a silver, but it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, there's a lot. The majority of the people who have reported on Rust have said the game is broken beyond playability. And the majority of people say when you try to like browse the servers on the Proton release, the game crashes. If Gary Newman and his team at Facepunch want to support Linux users, the next best thing they can do is to make the changes necessary to fix the Proton version. Fix the Windows version so that it runs in Proton. That would be such an excellent thing to do. I don't think it would break much, if anything, of your current release. And once you get a lot of these problems fixed, it's not going to be a huge issue going forward, I wouldn't think. Now, it might be a tall order to do because Unity engine is very high level and very abstracted from the actual code. So being able to like get down in the nitty gritty and actually change stuff in Unity is kind of a pain in the butt. So maybe they won't be able to do that. But it would be great if the Facepunch guys could support Linux, even if it's through the Proton wrapper. That would be excellent. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this because a bunch of people asked me what I thought, and while I wasn't personally affected by this, I don't play Rust, it's not my jam. I know that a lot of people will be affected by this. I know EG, I think, runs a server for Rust, so yeah, it kind of sucks. But yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. I'd really like to know what you have to say. If you believe in the work that I do, you can support this show with a monthly contribution over on Patreon, or you can support the show on LBRY. It's the free and open source alternative. You can also pick up a t-shirt. Down in the description, there's a link to that. But yeah, no matter what you do, whether you hit that like button or share this video with your friends, don't forget to subscribe to see more from me, the Linux Gamer. And as always, QN7 PGDH.